Well, good evening, everybody. And tonight we are going to cover the original note buyer's infallible four-step process for calculating discounted notes and for preparing your offer. Okay, this is something that I developed literally almost 35 years ago when I first started out calculating and trying to quote deals. I'm not kidding you. I would have a legal pad and it would like be almost full for just one deal. You know, I calculate it this way and oh, nope, I do this. Oops, forgot about that. And I'm looking, I mean, it drove me crazy. And so I decided that I needed to have a system for it. And so the system is, oh, I thought I showed a picture of it. Maybe it's the next one. Here it is. This is my system that I developed, okay? We'll go back to the case study, don't worry. But I came up with this because I felt like I needed an organized way for when I'm talking to people on the phone. And so I also developed these 4 steps, which I'll explain more when we get into it, and you can see them on the screen. But they help me to know that I wasn't making a mistake. It gives a checkpoint so that if you make a mistake, you catch it. Because think about it, like you're getting ready to give an offer to a note seller. What if you give them the wrong offer? I mean, can you imagine they accept your offer and you, oops, I didn't mean that. I meant $20,000 less. I mean, that would be mortifying, almost like Thursday night. But seriously, so that's how this all came about. Now, this is the note evaluation worksheet that I devised over 30 years ago. But nowadays, we do have the electronic version, thanks to Matthew, and you can access that on your dashboard, which makes it even simpler. Okay, I just wanted to show you where this came from. And it gives, here you do all your calculations, then you write out what you quote to the note seller, you write out what you sell it for, and then you've got a recap of your profit. So like I can go back through old files and just pull out this one sheet, tell you the whole rundown of the deal. So it is really handy to use. But anyway, so what I want to do tonight is to go through this case study. So let's say that a note seller responds to one of your postcards and he is asking for a quote on, you want to quote on this really nice note. Everything looks good, loan to value is good and everything. And the terms are that it was an original loan amount of $75,000 and it was amortized over 30 years with no balloon. The interest rate was 7%. Monthly payment was $498.98, and 29 payments have been made. Okay, so those are our terms. Now, what would you do if you got that information? Where do you start? Well, the first thing that what I always want to do is I want to verify that the terms are right. You would not believe how often the terms, what they say on the note, either they're wrong, they made a mistake in the calculation, or what's more common is that people tell you the wrong payment amount. They'll say, like on this one, they might have said the payment's $500. Well, it's not. If you look at the note says $498.98. But and I get that the borrower could be paying $500, and you certainly want to take that into account when you're calculating the balance. But here's the deal. They might, let's make it different. Let's say they're paying an extra $100. That's when it would really have an effect. And so you use the $100 when you calculate the current balance because they paid off some extra. But there's no guarantee they're going to keep paying $100 extra. So at that point, you would have to go back to the actual amount that they're obligated to pay. And so that's why we have this step 1. I want to know, did they calculate it properly? And is this what the note in fact says? So I would put in the $75,000 loan amount. Now, if you recall from our Thursday night webinar, you need to consider money out of your pocket as negative and into your pocket as positive. And I always like to look at my calculations as though I am the lender. Even if I'm the borrower, I'm going to look at it as though I'm a lender. That way I don't get mixed up on, oh, should I make this negative? Oh, it depends on whose view you're looking at it from. So if I'm lending somebody $75,000, this is going to be negative. And they said it was amortized over 30 years. So we put 360 into N and 7 into I, that's 7% interest. It's fully amortized, so 0 would go into future value. And all you have to do is press payment, and we see that the payment would be $498.98. So what, oops. Let's just go over here and put this on the calculator first so that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. Now, do you remember the 1, 2, 3 go on the calculator? First of all, you need to clear the calculator.
On your phone, Donna.
Oh. Thank you. All these newfangled things. There we go. Okay, I'll do that again. Shift, okay, which is the shift is that rectangular orange key, and then clear all. That clears the whole calculator. And we can see that if you look up here, it says end mode, which is correct. If we're calculating a mortgage, you would want it to be end mode. And you can see up here that in fact, it is 12 payments per year, which is what we want. So that's our 1, 2, 3 go. So now that we know that we have it set up properly, we're going to enter in 360N and then 7I, 75,000. Now we're going to use that plus or minus sign right there. Okay. Not the addition and subtraction sign down in the corner. We're going to change that to negative 75,000. Now, if you recall, that's just up in the display. We have to put it into PV. So we're going to put the PV, drop that into PV. Matthew, we don't want to get it too high because when we put the video on it, they won't be able to see it. That's probably pretty good. Thank you. Appreciate your adjusting it.
No problem.
And then we're going to put 0 into FV. Okay. And we want to solve for payment. Solve just means you press whatever you want to know, and voila, there it is. $498.98. Okay. So that is exactly what we have on the screen. And so this tells me if I, this is an important part. This, when we calculate the payment, even though you only see 2 decimals to the right of the decimal point, it's actually using a precision number. So if we looked at this and we did shift display equals, see, that's what it's really using. And so we want it to be the exact number. So we're going to hit shift round, and then we have to hit the payment, because by hitting the payment, it rounds the number that is in the payment register. Okay. And we can check that by doing shift display equals, and you can see it's rounded. So I only round if I'm actually writing a note or a modification. When I'm just getting a quote out, it's such a small amount that it's not going to affect my quote. But it could have a big effect if I were writing a note and calculating a balloon payment and that kind of thing. It could throw the whole balloon off. So it's important to know how to round, but I very rarely use it, primarily just when I'm doing the documentation. Okay. So then if I look at this, every time when you look at a row of these numbers, if you put them always in the same order as your calculator, even if it didn't say NIPV up there, I would look at these numbers and I'd say, if this note is written at $75,000 with 7% interest, and it's fully amortized over 360 months, then the monthly payments should be $498.98. Now, how did I know that it was fully amortized? Because the 0 is in the future value. Fully amortized means At the end of the loan, it's fully paid off and nothing is owed. So whenever you see 0 in future value, you know that that was a fully amortized loan. Okay. And if we move over to our note taking here, this is what that would look like. And it's just the same numbers we just saw on the screen before. Okay. Okay, so that was my first step. Now, these are the infallible 4 steps. So these 4 things, I do them every time that I calculate a discounted note. So the first thing is I check the payment amount. Now I'm going to calculate the balloon if there is one. Now, there obviously isn't always one. We're going to skip this step because we said there's no balloon, but I do want to show you how to calculate it just in case you come across one with a balloon and you don't know how to do it. So let's say there was really a 10-year balloon on this. What we would do is we would put 120 into N, and then we would solve for FV. So let's do this on our calculator. Okay, so we would put 120 into N, and we just simply press FV, and indeed we get a balloon amount of $64,358.75. And remember, some people think that means that next month, that's what the payoff is. When you calculate this balloon amount, by definition, it means that this is the amount that is remaining upon making that 120th payment, upon making the last payment. So if they were actually going to pay this off, they would pay the $64,358 plus $498.98. Okay, so it's important to recognize that. Okay, we're not talking about balloons anymore. This particular example did not have a balloon. Okay. And so you're going to see here in our notes, no balloon. Okay. Okay, so that was step 2. Step 3 would be to calculate the current balance. So if 30 payments have been made, what is the current balance on the loan? Do I see anybody going, wait a minute, Donna? Why 30 payments? Because he said, it called for 29 payments. Here's the deal. We can't close like that. We can be fast, but not that fast. So we need to allow a little bit of time. And it depends on where the next payment falls, like where we are in the pay cycle. But usually I'm going to add 1 or 2 more payments on because it's going to take us time to close. So here, since he said there were 29 payments that had been made, I simply made it 30 because that's what our offer will be for. Okay, so these figures are already in our calculator. Remember, if you do not erase the calculator, all of these numbers stay there. As long as you don't erase any of them, or if you don't replace them. So if you drop a different number into N, that's going to change it. And it's also going to have an effect on these other 4 numbers. And to find out what effect, you would have to solve for one of them to see how it changes it. So here we have 120 in N, but that's gone. We're now wanting to know if we've made 30 payments. So we're going to put 30 into N, and we solve for FV, and we get $72,990. Let's do that and see if this really works. So I'm going to put 30 into N, and we've got the 7, the negative 75,000, and the 498. So all I have to do is press FV, and we get it, 72,990.76. Okay, and if I look at these numbers, what these numbers tell me is that if the original loan amount was for 75,000 with 7% interest After making 30 monthly payments of $498.98 each, the current balance would be $72,990. Everybody with me? Perfect. Okay. And we move those over to our note sheet, and we've got that listed as well now. Okay. So we've calculated the payment. We have verified the payment amount. There was no balloon, so we skipped that. And now we've calculated the current balance. Now, the next step to me is the most important step of all, and it's the infallible fourth step. And I have to tell you, I don't know anybody who does this, but for me, it's what pulls everything together. It gives me a visual of what this note is really like. And if I don't do this fourth step, I'm kind of like just drawing numbers out of the air and going, oh, why did I do that? So let's look at the fourth step. Basically, what we want to do is calculate the present value of the remaining payments that we're going to buy. Now, we're going to calculate the present value of the remaining. Doesn't that sound like some highfalutin thing? It's like, it's not that big of a deal. What is the present value? It's the current balance. The present value of a loan is whatever's owed on it. But because the calculator uses PV, we call it calculating the present value of the remaining payments. Okay, now the reason that you want to do this, besides having a checkpoint, is you want to see what the present value is before we start discounting. And if you have this all set up, you're going to see in just a few minutes how easy it is just to run a whole string of numbers. And you can go, oh, if I drop it down to 8%, oh, I think I want 10. And you will see how it flows. It is really, really helpful when you're negotiating. Like what I used to do was I would write this out, and then I would get on the phone and someone would say, well, I need at least 20,000. Well, I could look at these numbers and I'd know, oh, that's between an 8.5% yield. And so that's why it's important to do this step. And you'll see that in just a minute. So you also need to know that this is the same thing as calculating the unpaid balance. Think about it. The unpaid balance, that's the same thing as the current balance. Okay, unpaid balance, that term became very popular back in the big downturn in 2008 when there were so many non-performing notes. Everybody called it, instead of the current balance, the unpaid balance, because they were behind. And so since they were behind, unpaid balance was not necessarily the same thing as what should have been owed then was the current balance, but it was not. You know, they could be 3 months behind and that could be added on to it. So what you need to know is, for our purposes, unpaid balance and current balance represent the same number. So when you want to calculate the present value of the remaining, your first step is you have to determine how many payments are remaining. So we said that the original term was 330 months. Well, if 30 payments have been made, then 330 payments remain. Okay, so we are going to put that into N. Okay, and we already know that we have interest of 7%, and we're going to be collecting payments of $498.98. And there's no balloon. Now, if there was a balloon, you would put it in there. Okay, move this back. If there is a balloon, you put that balloon amount into FV, but there isn't. So we've got 0. So now all we're going to do is just solve for PV. And we see that the present value of those remaining 330 payments, as it's written, based on 7% interest, it's So we have 3, 3, 0, and we put that into N. Okay. We already have 7 there, so we don't have to do anything there. We have 498.98. That's correct. Oh, we got to change that to 0. Okay. So future value is back to 0. And now all we're going to do is come over here and press PV. We are solving for the present value of the remaining payments. And it tells us that indeed the present value of these 330 payments is $72,991. Okay, so that's the current balance that is owed on the note. And it is the value of the note without any discount. Now, we always buy at a discount, so it's going to be less than that when we get done, okay? And so what this tells me when I see these numbers, and I really hope that you get in the habit of looking at these numbers and asking yourself, what does this mean? And notice how I've got whatever I solve for, I always underline it, okay? You need, as long as I have what I solve for underlined, then I can tell you what these 5 numbers mean. In this case, it says that if there are 330 remaining payments of $498.98 each, based on 7% interest, the unpaid balance or present value of the remaining payments is $72,991. Okay. So then we go over here and we add that to our list. So these are the 4 infallible steps. Now, do you see something interesting there? It might not be quite as obvious as it is sometimes, but do you see these numbers are almost identical? They usually are $1 or $2 off, a couple dollars off. And that is because when we're doing the calculations, remember I showed you that full precision number? So there's some portion of that that's just going to be hanging out there. It's just like when you divide and it doesn't divide evenly, then you've got something, a remainder. And that's why these vary based on rounding and based on working with the full precision number. But the point is they should be almost the same. And that is the infallible checkpoint. Okay. Now, why does this happen? Why does this happen? Okay, I will show you. We have 30 payments that have been made and 330 that's remaining. Okay, so Matthew, will you make a note on that we can change that on the recording, please? So we have 330 remaining. Okay. Now, if you work forward, do you see that you start at PV here and you go to FV here, and that's where we got the $72,990. But if you work backwards to calculate the unpaid balance, in that case, you're starting with FV and you're solving for PV. Do you see that it's the same point on the timeline? So what this tells us, is that the current balance and the unpaid balance are one and the same. They're right at the same point on the timeline. But the difference is if you're measuring from here to here, then you're going to put in PV and solve for FV. But if you're going from here backwards, you're going to solve for PV. That was one of the most confusing things to me when I started doing notes. I just could not figure out. I mean, I'm trying to memorize, well, if you want the current balance, you're going to solve for FV. But oh no, here we solve for PV. And so it wasn't until I drew a timeline and I put the numbers down and I went, I see it. It's the same number. It just depends on how you got there. Okay, so I hope that helps you to understand why that's like that. And then you can see why we can use that to our advantage. Because if you do all four of these calculations, I mean, sometimes I'll get a number that's $10,000 off. And it's usually because I forgot a negative sign or some crazy thing like that. And the thing is, if I had not done all four steps, I would have given a wrong quote. I would not have known that I had the wrong number there. And so to me, I mean, for real, 99% of the time, I go through all these four steps because I can very clearly see that I have not made any mistakes. And that's why I do that. So know that sometimes they'll be the same, but most of the time they're off just a little bit, okay? Usually it's just a couple dollars, might be $5, something like that, but not a lot. So besides giving you a checkpoint, it also sets you up perfectly so that you can compare the prices at different yields. Now we're going to do that, but before we start that, there are two considerations that you need to look at. One is the loan to value, okay? The safety of a note is dependent upon how much equity is in it. If you have this $75,000 note and it's secured by a $50,000 house, I don't think we want to buy that note, because if we had to take the property back and sell it, we'd be losing money. We couldn't even get enough to cover the $75,000 investment. Okay, so we want to make sure that it is a safe loan to value before we even begin to quote. And then the other thing that we have to look at is that most investors will have a minimum discount. That means they're never going to pay par for it. What is par? Par means with no discount, whatever the current balance is. So let me explain why that is like that. If the current balance is let's call it $73,000, okay, and they pay $73,000 for that note, and maybe they've got some closing costs, title costs, and appraisal. Maybe they have $1,500 of expenses in it. Maybe they had to move money from a stock account over to their self-directed IRA. That was some time and trouble. If that note pays off immediately, they don't recoup any of their expenses or their time. And so they figure, okay, I need to make at least 5%, or sometimes, like on a really good note that everybody wants, I've seen it as low as 3%. But basically, it's like hardly ever do you see somebody wanting to pay par. They would have to be really desperate and want that note really bad and say, it's a risk I'm willing to take. If he pays off and I don't collect my costs, oh well, I want that note. In that case, maybe they would pay par, but I make it a policy to never pay par. If you pay par, then you never have the opportunity on that note to increase your yield from an early payoff. You've heard me talk about how one of my favorite things to do is to buy a note at a discount, and then when it pays off early, I get this huge rate of return and I get this lump sum discount. What I thought I was going to get over 30 years, I get in a matter of a couple months. Well, if you pay par for your notes, that's never going to happen. Okay. So these are the two things that you should take a look at before you actually start crunching the numbers. So let's take a look at this. This is what we're looking at buying. This is step number 4, the present value of the remaining payments. So let's look at the loan to value. One thing that we can do if the loan to value is too high is we could consider doing a partial. Now, I don't want to get off on a tangent and go through all of that, but the idea is we buy a smaller part of the note, and that way there's more equity in it to protect whatever monies you're advancing. So this particular house, if it had a fair market value of $100,000 based on this current balance, the loan to value is 73%, which is great. Generally speaking, if you remember, on a single family home that is owner occupied, usually 80% is figured, a safe loan to value. Okay, so this falls within that range. So this will work out fine. So, and the way we calculated that was we took the current balance and we divided it by the fair market value, and that's how we got our 73%. Okay. So, as I was saying, many investors require a minimum discount of 5 or 10%. It used to be solid across the board. It was always at least 10%, but probably more so in the last 10 or 15 years, it became much more common to use 5%. And I just think it was because notes became more popular. You had more people going after them. So they were willing, okay, I don't need to make any immediate money. I just need to cover my bare expenses. So now most investors will have a minimum 5%. Okay. But every now and then you still get the 10. So again, the reason they do that is so that if there is an early payoff, they at least recoup their upfront costs and increase their yield a little bit. Okay. So looking at our number 4, our present value of the remaining, if we have an investor who requires a 5% minimum discount, we simply take 95% of the current balance, and we know the most that this investor will pay for this note is $69,341. Okay. Now we don't know what the yield is on that yet. The yield might be too low and they might want to pay even less for it, but they want a minimum discount. That means that they're not going to pay more than $69,341. So what we're going to do now is we take that $69,341 and we're going to put that into PV here. Okay. And then we are going to solve for I to see what their actual rate of return is. So let's just do that over here. Okay, we still have our 330 in there. We have our 7% interest, which we're going to recalculate. We need to put $69,341 negative. Remember, that's that sign right there. And we are going to put that into PV. Okay. And then we are going to solve for I. Just press I. And we do see, in fact, that if an investor who wants a 5% minimum discount, if he's willing to pay 95 cents on the dollar for this note, then his buy rate or his yield to maturity is 7.54%. Okay, so if he likes 7.54%, great, we could go with that. But if he says, no, I want an 8% yield, then we would put 8 in here. We'd solve for PD. Let's just do it. It might mess up our numbers. We'll do it anyway. We can re-add them. Just out of curiosity, if we put 8 into I, and now we solve for PV, that means that the most, if he wants an 8% return right here, the most that he's going to pay is $66,492. And something that you need to keep in mind, do you see how those are inversely proportional? The higher the rate of return that the investor wants, the less he's going to pay. So when you're running numbers, you need to know that as the interest rate goes up, the present value is going to go down, unless something else changes in the deal. Okay. So this is where I start to determine what my offer is actually going to be. Okay, I make sure my loan to value is safe. And then I look at what is the investor's minimum discount. And then I work from there. So we're back up here. This is our present value of the remaining, working off of step 4. And these are the numbers we just calculated. Let me put this back in here just so that our calculator matches. 69,341 negative 7.54. Okay. Okay. So, as I mentioned before, you have to look at what yield does the investor want. And this is what I meant about once you set up step 4, it gets everything in order. You can go down and you could just, you could go like this, watch. You can just go, oh, here, I'll pull that up a bit. You can go 8 into I, solve for PV. So you write down there 66,492. Okay, 8.5, put that in I, solve for PV. Then you're at 63. 9 into I, solve for PV, 60,000. Do you see how easy that is? Because all those other numbers stay the same. We're not changing those. And so what I used to do, and I don't do it so much more because I'm so quick at it that I can just do it without. But when I was trying to learn how to formulate an offer and how to negotiate, I did this all the time. And I would write, like, I just make breaks and I just do a range. And I would actually write in what these numbers were all the way down here. I don't think I put those in there. Let me see if I did. Oh, I did. Okay. So see, I went ahead and filled them in for you. So that really gives you a great visual. If you have an investor that always wants a 10% rate of return, oh, you know, he's going to take a big discount. But maybe you got somebody that's maybe going to do it at 8.5. Look, you can make $7,500 more money. And you got that at a glance because those numbers are already written out there like that. So what I was saying before was like, so if somebody came in and they said, I'll offer you 64,000, you know, like at a glance, I can go, oh, that's right between here. He's talking about around an 8.25% yield. Okay. Or if he said, I want an 8.25% yield, I know it's somewhere between 63 and 66,000. So it really empowers you when you're negotiating on the phone. Now, I will tell you that rarely do I negotiate on the phone. I used to do it all the time. And I realized that, one, I don't work well under pressure. I like to take my time, think it through, double check it. And so most of the time, if I decide that I'm going to change a quote, I will usually say, all right, let me sharpen my pencil. Let me see what I can do, and I'll call you back. I want to check a few things. I want to go online and look at a couple things or something like that, because that's what I do. I look at values and stuff online. So that's what I normally will do. But nonetheless, even if I don't intend to tell the note seller what I'm doing, if they throw out a number, this still gives me an idea of how much I'm off, or, you know, am I likely to get this deal or not? Okay. Okay, so what yield does the investor want? Now, what we've calculated here is discounting to yield these numbers, okay? So if your investor wants a 10% rate of return, then your investor would pay $56,000 for it, okay? If your investor wants a 9% rate of return, he would pay $60,879, okay? And as I mentioned before, the higher the yield, the less the purchase price, okay? And am I confusing anybody? Everybody good? I'll explain something here that you might be wondering about. We'll get to that in a second. So if you have an investor that wants an 8% return, we know that he's going to pay $66,492. okay? And if you want an $8,000 profit, you can readily see that, hey, if you quoted at 9.5% for your buy rate, then this is what, that would be gross profit too. So you still have to deduct your closing costs, which usually run $1,200 to $1,500, depending on whether or not you have to get a new title policy, okay? So do you see how you can pick numbers out? It helps you to easily formulate your offer. I think I went backwards. Okay. Now this is the part I wondered if you might have been confused about. So what we just talked about was discounting the note to give the investor a 10% yield or a 10% rate of return on their money, okay? That is not the same thing as buying a note at a 10% discount. You're going, Donna, what the heck are you talking about? If somebody says that they want a 10% discount, that means they'll pay 90 cents on the dollar, okay? In that case, they're going to take $72,991, the current balance, and you multiply it by 0.90, and you find out that they will pay, the most they'll pay is $65,692. Now, put that into PV and solve for I. Now, get this. If someone wants a 10% discount, their rate of return is 8.13. Okay? So do you see the difference there? What we did on the last slide, let's just go back and look at it. This tells us if an investor wants a 10% rate of return or yield, then he's going to pay $56,000 for it. But if he wants 10% off the top, he's going to pay $65,692, and his actual yield is going to be 8.13. That can be so confusing. Like, some people just throw the terms around so loosely that I really can't tell exactly what they mean, okay? So what you need to do then is you need to ask them, okay? And what happened was, it used to be you never talked about buying a note at a 10% discount. It was always discounted to yield 10%, a totally different number. But when the non-performing notes got really popular, they always talk about a non-performing note. I'll give you 50 cents on the dollar for that. I'll give you 90 cents on the dollar. And so that's why that became real popular, and it kind of overflowed into the performing notes. And so that's why you just need to ask, okay? If you are not sure what they're talking about saying, just say, do you mean that you will pay 90 cents on the dollar for this? Or do you mean you want me to discount it so that your yield will be 10%? Okay, and they will tell you. If they don't know what you mean, then they don't know what they're doing, okay? All right, so going back to what we had calculated before, remember we said we were looking for $8,134 of gross profit, okay? So that's where we are. And so we are going to prepare an offer based on these numbers, okay? Let me stop right here and see if anybody has any questions.
Some people had caught on. We'll fix that slide up before. Let's see. Shelley said, awesome. Yeah, it is so cool to see. You know, I mean, you can see the gamut of what you could offer right there. It's very cool.
Yep. I just am a very visual person, and a picture is definitely worth 1,000 words for me. And seeing something like this, it really does give me a better understanding of notes. And I will tell you, I have never seen anyone use a timeline except when my son was in an accounting class in college, and they showed a timeline with PV. And this was years after I taught myself how to do this. But for me, it was, I had to do something to try to get a handle on it, because that PV and FV just totally messed me up, how they could both mean the same thing. And as soon as I put it on the timeline, that helped. And then in determining my yields, my rates of return, when I started listing this out like that, it's like, this is way cool. So it makes it easier, and I think it will give you a better understanding of what we're doing and how the numbers work. Okay.
Are there times where you do this and you realize, oh, wow, I don't know if I can make an offer because of the way the numbers work out like that?
Yeah, sometimes that does happen, actually. I'll tell you a funny thing that happened today. I don't know if Barika is on the call tonight, but this was the strangest call note seller, I think, that I've ever talked to. So he has this note, and the current balance was like 220,000. It was a very nice property. I couldn't see a picture, but from what I understood of it, it was probably worth 350,000, and they only owed 220 on this note. And this was an older gentleman, like 80 years old, and he tells Barika he will not accept less than $325,000 for the note. I mean, the note, they only owe 220. And he was adamant. I said, Barika, are you sure he's not confused? He doesn't think that we're buying the property? That does not make any sense at all, why he would say that. And I got on the phone with him, and it was crazy. He meant it. I said, Barika said that, you wouldn't accept less than 325,000. He said, that's right. He said, if you want to buy this note, that's what it's going to take. And so I explained, well, if we buy this for 325,000 and the next day the borrower comes in and pays it off, we just lost over $100,000. And you know what he said? That's a risk you're going to have to be willing to take. I'm going, are you nuts? I said,
Rika's on the call.
Is she?
Rika, did you talk to him?
Oh,
Yeah.
he's so interesting.
So interesting.
Tell him about it, Barika.
He wanted money like he was going to actually sell the home.
It was crazy. I mean, I told her, I said, I have never seen anybody like that before. And so then he went on to say that he talked to his CPA, and his CPA says, let me tell you what they're going to do. These big fund managers, they buy these notes, and then if they go into like if they pay off early like that, and they'll overpay for them, and then if they pay off early and they actually get a loss, they just use those to offset other losses. And there's all kinds of ways that you can offset losses. You just have to get a good CPA. And I do know that to some extent that is true. Like, I know you can buy losses from somebody else to offset, some income that you have and that kind of thing. But I told the guy, I said, I've been doing this for 35 years. I've done well over 1,000 transactions. And I don't know anyone that would pay par. I mean, it would be real rare if they paid par, but they absolutely would never pay more than par for that. It's just not going to happen. Now, maybe the big guys do it, but I can tell you, when we buy a note, we intend to make a profit. It's like, why would anyone buy something knowing I don't have to take that risk? I got other notes I can buy that are risk-free, pretty much, you know what I mean? So, Barika, that was quite a call, I have to say.
Rika, how'd you find this gentleman?
Direct mail letter.
Okay, got it from mail. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, congrats.
Yeah.
Thank
But that
you.
was the strangest call, and then he kept going on, and it was clear he did not want to sell that note. And so what I did was I did the takeaway. When you see somebody like that that he's wasting our time. And I think he was, Barika, don't you think to some extent he was kind of showing off, like, oh, ha, I know what you're doing. But
yes, mm-hmm. He told me that between him and his wife, they have 6 degrees total.
I didn't know that. That figures, but I mean, it was like, so what I did was I said, I said, honestly, I think that you need to keep this note. It's such a great note. Why would you ever want to sell it? And then he starts coming back. Well, because our kids would have to deal with it, and we want to sell some things because we don't want to have them to have to deal with it. We're 80 years old and stuff. And I said, well, if it comes to that, give us a call back. And I didn't try to sell him on it. That is a takeaway close. And I told Barika, I don't expect him to call back. But if he is serious about getting his portfolio in order so his kids don't have to deal with it, and he's saying that he's trying to transfer things to a family trust, if he's serious about doing that, he may call us back. I mean, but I wouldn't hold your breath, Barika.
I'm going to follow up with him, but I won't hold my breath either.
Okay, I think that's a good plan. I think that's a real good plan. So yes, to answer your question, Matthew, sometimes I look at the numbers and I go, hey, this is never going to work.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Vicky did ask, she said, Donna, you said you rarely negotiate on the phone. How do you negotiate?
I tell them, that's a good point. Let me think about that. I'll put a pencil to it. Let me take another look at the numbers. Let me see if I can do any better. And then I tell them I'll call them back. And I run some numbers and I call them back. Now, if you are going to change your quote substantially, you better have a reason for it. Like if you're going to jump your offer by $10,000, that tells them that you had well over $10,000 profit in it. So you always want to give a reason. So I might say, I found another investor that really likes Texas notes. And I called him up and he will offer us more. So I can increase my offer by 10,000 or whatever it would be. And you know that I don't like to give 10,000. I don't give round numbers like that. I generally will give a specific number because then it's less negotiable. If I say, well, I'll give you 10,000 more. Well, if you can do 10, why don't you do 11? But if I say I can increase my offer $10,302, they're much less likely to come back with a counter. They might, but not usually. Okay. Okay, so let's look at how to write your offer. When you write your offer, you need to make sure you include everything you need. The first thing and most important is to write down exactly what you are purchasing, okay? Beginning with which payment. You need to say, we will buy the remaining payments beginning with the payment due January 1st, okay? You can say, we will buy the entire remaining balance of $72,000 payable in 330 monthly payments of $498.98 each, beginning with the January payment or whatever it is. But you need to clearly define what you're buying. Then you need to list all contingencies. And my favorite one is subject to our exclusive review and approval of all relevant documentation. I probably should have written that down. Let me repeat it again in case you want to write it down. Subject to our exclusive review and approval of all relevant documentation, including an appraisal, title work, proven pay history, and the borrower's credit report. And half the time, as long as everything looks good, I don't get the borrower's credit report, but I put it down there in case I want to, okay? So you have to list your contingencies. Other contingencies would be if there is an underlying bank loan that needs to be paid off. I'd say that the first mortgage with 21st Century needs to be paid out of these proceeds or something like that. I always have a weasel clause in there, and a weasel clause is one that allows you to get out of it. Well, subject to my exclusive review and approval, that has a legal definition to it. That means you might like the appraisal, but if I don't like it, I can just say, sorry, I'm not buying it. And that's a weasel clause, okay? I also say who pays the expenses. And normally I always pay expenses. I think that helps me to get more deals accepted because they're not in this business. They don't know if there's $1,000 worth of expenses or $5,000. So I tell them, the words I use are, I will pay you $50,000 net cash. That means you're getting a wire for $50,000. Okay. And I put that we pay all the expenses. Okay. And you always want to include how soon you're going to close. And what I have learned, particularly with COVID, is I say that normally we close within 30 days. If everything goes smoothly, we close in like 3 weeks. I've even closed in much less time than that. But I say we normally close within 3 weeks, but I ask you to allow 45 days in case of any unforeseen circumstances or in case of any issues with appraisal and title services. I say that more often now because like title, I'd waited 6 weeks to get title on an Atlanta note. 6 weeks for title to come back. I mean, normally you get it in 3 to 5 days. So that was unbelievable.
I've heard appraisals are really backed up, Donna. Have you noticed that?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And there was a time, like on the appraisals for in Texas, I actually paid $600 for a drive-by appraisal because they were so busy they wouldn't do it. And that was the last time I did that. I'll never do that again. So now, a lot of times I will, if the loan to value is low, then, and I can really substantiate it with online numbers, I don't order even a drive-by. Like I'm buying a little pool of notes right now, and they're all like 40 and 50% loan to value. Why waste the money? I mean, that's an extra $2,000 in my students in my pocket, that's an extra 2,000 for us to split. And so in that case, I've already gone over it with the investor and I've shown him, and please don't misunderstand me. Like if Zillow gives you a number, you cannot take that to the bank. It's like, it's funny how sometimes it kind of goes in waves. Like for a while, Zillow used to be real low, then it got to be real high. And so what I do is I'll check Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, HomeSnap, Homes.com, Movoto, Red something or other. I can't think of the name of it.
Redfin?
Anyway, Redfin, yeah. But what I do is I put the address into my search bar and whatever comes up, I'll click on those. And what happens is you can get a range. It's not something that I'd use for buying the house, but it does give you a pretty good idea of what the value is. And especially if you're at a low loan to value, it's close enough for you to determine that there's plenty of equity in the house. So why waste the money on a drive-by then? So that's pretty much what I do. And I will, go ahead.
Are the drive-by appraisals also taking longer included?
Yeah.
I've only heard that for the other appraisals too. Drive-bys are taking longer too.
Yep.
JR here asked, who does Donna use for title history?
So the title varies. I usually go to whatever title company closed on the origination of the note, because especially if they issue title insurance, because then it's real easy because they've already done an exam and it might only be 2 years old. So I can ask them just to update. So it costs less money. They don't have to go back 80 years or 40 years. They only need to check what happened in the last 2 years. And so it saves money and time to go back to the title company that originated that note. Now, sometimes it was an attorney's office and they're not in business anymore, that kind of thing. And so in that case, I will go to any title company. Normally, I'm looking for one in that county, but it has to be someone who will close in that state in that county. Now in Texas, I've got my favorite title company that I like to use, and they close statewide, so I'll generally go back to them. But it just depends. Like if you're working in a certain area, like in Florida, I've got one, they don't do the whole state, but they'll do several counties. And so I've already done my second deal with that title company. But normally speaking, you're going to use a different one every time because you go wherever the note seller had used originally.
Okay.
Other questions?
Antonio, thanks for joining us. He said he had to, he's got something going on with his family. That's awesome. No problem. Let's see here. I don't think I missed anyone's question. If you, let's see.
Okay. Well, one last thing that you also want to, or I think I got a couple here. How long will your offer remain open? So I don't always put that on there, but if I feel like someone is shopping me and they want time to get offers from other people, I'll say, you know, this offer is good for 48 hours, or I need to know by 5 o'clock Friday whether or not you want it or not, because if you're not going to take it, I've got other, when I make an offer, I actually reserve money. And that is true. Like I'll have 3 investors that want notes. And so if I make an offer, I'm kind of thinking, okay, I'm going to give that to Bob. And I'm making another offer. Okay, that can go to Nancy. And so in my head, I am allocating what goes where. Well, if they're not going to take it, I need to use those investors for a different note. So that's why I don't leave it open. But on the other hand, sometimes it's a legitimate thing where you're talking to the wife and the husband's out of town for a week. And so you need to be willing to adjust. And then how do they accept the offer? I always do a call to action. Hey, let me know if you'd like to move forward, and I'll have you, if you send me a copy of the note, I always get a copy of the note before I write an agreement, because they can tell you things and they mean well, but they remembered wrong. They rounded numbers. If I'm going to go to the trouble to write up an agreement, I want to know it's right. So I tell them, you can email me a copy of the note. I'll put together a very simple letter of agreement and we'll get started on it right away. Okay. So this is what my offer would actually look like. It's like what I was saying before. We will pay $58,358 net cash to you for the entire remaining balance of $72,991, payable in 330 monthly installments of $498.98 each, beginning with the September 1, 2021 payment. Here's my contingency clause. I did have it written out for you. This offer is contingent upon our exclusive review and approval of all relevant documentation, including but not limited to an appraisal, title report, credit report on the payor, and proof of pay history. We pay all expenses. You will receive a wire for $58,358. We typically close within 30 days, but we ask that you allow 45 days in case of any unforeseen issues with title, appraisal, etc. Please let us know within 5 business days if you'd like to proceed. We'll prepare a simple letter of agreement. We'll get started right away when we receive the signed letter and copies of the relevant documentation.
Can you go back a slide, Don? I want to amend the weasel clause in the chat.
Okay. What you had is probably close enough. I don't always put those in the same order.
Yeah, I just had subject. I just want to make sure I got everything here. Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay. So when the note seller accepts your offer, the next step is to actually prepare the note purchase agreement. And you will find that in your Note Buyer's Master Guide system or in the 2019 media set. Okay, but we'll save that for another time. I just wanted to show you the calculations because this is something that we're going to go over a lot on Saturday, on the first day of the academy. And so I just wanted to make sure you had that understanding. If you don't know about the Academy or you haven't signed up yet, we extended the early bird offer. It was supposed to end Sunday night. And then I realized, because we had added to our pre-webinar series, people were going to come here tonight, and I wanted them to be able to get the early bird special. So we have extended it through tomorrow night, midnight, Pacific Standard Time. And that is a $300 savings. Okay, so you have until tomorrow to still get that. This is going to be a very unique academy because I have never done anything just like it. Last year we did some of it and people loved it so much, I took it to a totally different level this year. That's my plan. So what we learned was that 4 days was too much. The survey said that that was just too long to sit in front of a computer, and they wish they had more easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching. So that is exactly what we came up with. We've cut down the actual time online to 2 days. And instead of 3 months of the easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching, we're going to give you 6 months of easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching. So I think that is an absolute winning combination. My goal is that I want you to be closing note deals. And I think this will give you the hands-on training. I mean, to be able to actually go through sample deals and figure out, because like if you get a deal, it's like, wow, where do I go from here? You know, you need some experience looking at notes. So we're going to spend Saturday doing that. And then on Sunday morning, I'm going to walk you through an entire deal. I'll show you all my documentation and everything so you can see all the due diligence and what's done behind the scenes. And by the way, if you do the easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching, you get that with every deal we close. But then on Sunday in the afternoon, I'm going to go over my alternative, my exclusive proprietary option agreement. And that is a much, much better way to do partials. Effectively, you arrive at the same thing, but it is a much better legal way to do it because it uses specific, each person involved has a specific ownership and it is defined. Okay. And I had a couple people say, oh, thanks for telling us about the options. I do options all the time. You know, I'll use my option agreement. I really, really recommend that you don't do that, because when you have a partial purchase of a note, there are nuances that you need to take into account. Like if it pays off early, what happens? You've got 2 people interested in this note. And so with the option agreement, I was able to really, like, it took me a couple months to write it out. And then I even perfected it over 3 years before I felt comfortable enough to share it with everybody. But it really defines exactly what happens in those cases. And I've had several attorneys look at it, and I believe I have what is really a great alternative to doing the partial purchase agreement. So you're going to get hands-on interactive learning. You'll be looking and reviewing deals, creating quotes. We're going to have breakout sessions so you can get off into groups. So that way you're not stuck on doing something all by yourself. You can work with other people and help each other. And you'll see my exact thought process of how I analyze notes. You'll see my actual pricing. People ask me that all the time. Well, you'll see it on Saturday of the Academy. And then I already mentioned this. So this is 2 days of training that will empower you to close more deals, make quick cash, and build a financial legacy. And you can do it all from the comfort of your own home. I do want to mention the easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching, how that works, because like I said, I am going to include 6 months of my easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching. That's where you follow the marketing plan. And when somebody calls you, just like Marika did, she filled out her submission form, she sent it over to me. And so I evaluated it all. Now, in this case, I didn't even send it back. On the other one she sent over, I sent, you know, what we would offer, but the one I talked about today was so weird. I said, I think we just need to call him up. And so we both got on the phone, and then she listened to me talk to him, so that she had the benefit of my expertise, and at the same time she's learning. And if he would have agreed, like, we would split the profits, so she would be making money on it. So the way that works is you send the submission form over, and that's when your actual Easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching starts. The 6 months starts the day after the academy, but the actual me helping you with the deal, you got to have a deal for me to help you. Okay. And so when you send me the submission form, I write out exactly what you need to quote. So there's no guesswork. If they accept the offer, you let me know. You're going to be the liaison with the note seller. So you'll gather up the copy of the note and the other documents, and then I'll write up the note purchase agreement, and you get it signed. And then I do all the due diligence. I often will have you order the appraisal. I pay for it, but I'll have you find an appraiser. I order the title. I get the insurance. I get the investor added on to the hazard insurance. I line up my investor to buy the note, so you don't even have to use your own investor. And I close the deal. And so when we get paid for that, we split the profits 50-50. I've been doing the Easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching for 30 years, and it is absolutely the best way for people to learn, because when you stand to make some money on a deal, you pay a lot better attention. Okay. So to sign up, you can go now to notebuyerzacademy.com. It again is November 13th and 14th. It is virtual. It's 2 days. We are going to have a Friday night meet and greet, and then Saturday night, Carl Fisher from Camaplan is coming, and he's got a great presentation. I could listen to him so much, because he's always got really good ideas on stuff that you can do with your IRA. Every time I hear him, I learn something new. So he's going to be with us on Saturday evening. So this will go from basically Friday night until Sunday at 5 o'clock. And we're doing our virtual world tour. We're even going to have, like we did last year, we're going to have prizes for the best costume. So Matthew, I can't even remember our itinerary. What kind of costumes do they need? We have some cold weather and some.
We're gonna have some beach days. We're gonna have a safari. We're gonna be going to the Amazon rainforest. We're at the safaris and the Savannah desert. So, or Sahara.
I wish we were really going to some of those places. We're just doing it virtually, but we have fun while we're doing it. Okay. So again, the price is $12.97, but sign up before midnight tomorrow Pacific time. You save $300. So you can get both the coaching and the academy for only $9.97. If you do not have my master guide, you're going to need to get that, because that is a vital part of it. It's the foundation for your learning. We put together a bundle price, so you can add that on for only $1,994. And I do want to say that if you're buying the bundle, then you get a year of the Easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching, because you got 6 months of coaching that comes with the master guide.
We added on for $997, Don. It's $1994 for the bundle, just to clarify that.
Is that not what I said?
You said you can add it on for $1994. I just want to clarify that.
You know what? Sometimes your mouth just doesn't say the same thing that your mind is thinking. That's what I meant. You can add it on for $997. So the bundle price is $1994. Thank you for clarifying that, Matthew. Okay, so I hope you guys are going to be able to come. It's going to be fun. It is going to be informative. And I really believe that it will equip you to go out and start working on notes, and we'll close some deals and make some money. My hope is that the next year will be your best note buying year ever, and it will really jumpstart your note buying business. So I hope you can make it, and we are going to have recordings available also. Anything else that you can think of, Matthew? I think I covered everything. Any questions from anyone?
Yeah, I just put out a text in the chat to see if anyone's got any questions. People are saying thank you, Shelly and Zaya. Veronica had to leave. She said thanks before she left just a few minutes ago.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
She said it helped a lot. Okay, great. Let's see.
I think we need to do these more often. I love seeing everybody and connecting with people. It's easy to get stuck in your house, and you know, Even though we're not in person, it's very good to see everybody's faces.
Yes, Shelley asked if she'll get the event recording. We're going to record the academy, and you guys will have that on your dashboard going forward. We'll try to get, I'll do my best to get Saturday's replay to you as soon as possible on Sunday, and same for Saturday, or for Sunday on Monday.
So if you have come to the academy, you get it free. Okay, you get the
Yes.
recordings free. But if you are not coming, then, I mean, the recordings are only for the people who attend. I mean, we can sell the recordings separately, but the recordings are for academy attendees. Okay. All righty. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you all for joining me. Matthew, thank you for your help. Definitely could not do it without you.
No
And
problem.
I hope everybody has a wonderful evening, and I hope you sign up for the academy. We will have a lot of fun, and it will be a great learning experience for you. Okay. Good night, everybody, and God bless.